My name is Harish, and I have been in the activism space uh, since the past uh, since the past 23 years or so. I actually began as an animal welfare activist. I never wanted to be a human rights activist. I'm an accidental human rights activist. I'm known as an accidental. Accidentally, I got known as a human rights activist. It wasn't something that I intended to do. It wasn't something that I planned on doing. It was all that I was doing is basically living my life and living my life truly, and that became the truest form of activism for everyone. I didn't want to change the world. I didn't want to file a petition in the Supreme Court. Um, these all were not things that I wanted to do 23 years before. Um, 23 years before, I was battling um, my own challenges. I am a male survivor of child sexual abuse. I was raped when I was 7 years of age, and I was raped till the age of 18. And all through my childhood, I didn't even know what my sexuality. I didn't know the word sexuality. First of all, I didn't. I obviously didn't know the difference between sex and gender. I didn't know the word sexuality. I just knew that I used to. All my childhood, I used to hate men, and I used to hate men because of the fact that I was sexually assaulted by a man and then his friends. Um, and I'm talking about something that's 23, 24 years before. Around that time, the conversation on sexuality, the conversation regarding gender and sexuality was not of the level that we have today. Today people are more aware. There are media channels who speak about these issues quite openly. But I still remember there was a time when I didn't. There weren't many people. The only people whom I knew who were activists by the time that I started speaking out about my sexuality, which was way back when I was like 24 or 25. Now I'm 41. Were Ashok Rao Kavi and Nitin Karani, and both of them were associated with the Humsafar Trust. And at that moment, um, I thought that, you know what, I want to be anything, but I don't want to be an activist, because I didn't like the fact that there was so much of spotlight on a person's life. I first spoke about child sexual abuse when I was around 18 years of age, and at that time it was unheard of that male survivors of child sexual abuse exist. It was considered. I was constantly looking for examples of male survivors of child sex abuse, because, you know, whenever you're going through any struggle, to find people who are like you, struggling like you, or who have come out victorious like you, is like the hope of an oasis in a desert. So I was looking out for people. I didn't find anyone until one day it dawned upon me that I have to be that person. I started speaking up about child sexual abuse when I was around 18. This was way back in 19, 1990, 1998 or 1997 or 1998. I started speaking about male child sexual abuse, and they created a huge dhamaka around that time, because this was the first, for many people, I was the first male survivor who stood there and who was sharing his story. Then when I was around 20, 24, I had a chance to go to Singapore. I was in conflict with my sexuality throughout. I didn't know whether I was gay. I didn't see many examples of, I forget seeing examples of queer women out there. I didn't see examples of queer men, apart from a very few examples that I saw, and all of whom were activists. And I always thought that activists are different people. They they have a mission in life. They are not ordinary people. Until, of course, I became one. I became recognized as one, though I never called myself an activist um, until the world conferred that title on me. Um, So around the age of 23, 24, I learned by elimination. I went to Singapore. I had sex with a commercial sex worker, a woman. It was a one night stand and it didn't stand. And that's when I decided that I'm going to stand up for myself, stand up for my truth. And I opened up about my sexuality after I came back from Singapore. Um, and that was the first time I remember my first name. I had a pseudonym, and the pseudonym was Aham. And first it was Yash. I used to call myself Yash because I was a big Yash Chopra fan. And then I started calling myself Aham, and that was my name. And I remember my first interview was in Midday, where my name was Yash in my first interview. So I think that from that space, I remember the first channel which outed me, and that time Times Now was an upcoming channel, and it was a progressive channel, but they had outed me on television where my face was supposed to be covered because I wasn't very confident about coming out as a gay man, because I knew that people will correlate my sexuality and my sexual abuse and start assuming that everyone who gets sexually abused becomes gay, which is not true. So I remember those days. That was the first time when I actually started speaking about, I spoke about it on Times Now, and Times Now outed me accidentally. And that actually led to me coming on other channels and speaking openly about sexuality. Around that time, uh, the 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 movement was, we still had Section 377, which was in a which was in its draconian form in our statutory books. The conversations around sex and sexuality were in whispers. Whispers and whimpers is where you could hear conversations about sex and sexuality. Um, um, and gender, people often saw in the binary, and around that time, I remember that even transgender was only seen as a trans woman who happened to be always a hijra person from the hijra community. So I think around that time there was awareness. There were many activists who were working really hard. So I wasn't the first one. I will not be the last one. So there were many activists who were working really hard, but the amount of awareness on issues was abysmally low. Around that time, I remember speaking on various issues. Ashok Rao Kavi had done a lot of good work around that time. Though I do understand that people have a difference of opinion and disagree, and rightfully so, on a lot of things that he speaks about. There was one cannot deny the fact that he did galvanize the movement and speak about issues, and the reason why I'm able to um, speak so eloquently today is because of the hard work of activists like him and Nitin Karani and lot um, uh, Vikram Doctor and a lot of people like them who actually started the movement around that time. I don't agree with all their views today. I didn't agree with all their views even yesterday, but I can't deny the fact that I have to be grateful to history. The reason why I speak today is because I stood on the shoulders of a lot of them who actually laid the foundation for a lot of conversations that we have today. Um, so it started with that. Then of course we had the struggle of and we shouldn't forget that one of the pioneers of the LGBT movement is not a person from the LGBT community. It is Anjali Gopalan, uh, who headed NAS Foundation, and she identifies as a heterosexual woman, heterosexual cisgendered woman, and we had the NAS petition, which was which is out there. And before that also we had uh, Arif Zafar, who was in Lucknow or somewhere in UP, Lucknow or Kanpur, who was arrested um, for distributing condoms during the AIDS epidemic, um, because he was assaulted in the police station. He was in custody for 50 days. And then we had AIDS Bedbhav Bhagao Andolan, which started the first fight, and then Anjali Gopalan from NAS Foundation, they kept at it. So 2009 was when we had a positive verdict from the Delhi High Court, which was again the NAS Foundation um, um, versus the government. It was that was the verdict, and it was a verdict which had Justice A.P. Shah had read down Section 377. What I mean by reading down is he said that as long as people have consent, have sex with consent, uh, where the person is a fellow adult, and and it's done in private, it's not for the state to interfere. So they didn't remove Section 377. They said that it's still illegal if there's no consent. It's still illegal if it's not between two human beings. It's still illegal if it's between minor, if there is a minor involved. But if it's absolutely legal for people, as long as there's consent and they are of legal age, and it's in private, it's absolutely okay for them to have sex. Though the word homosexuality was not even used over there, it was, and they cited the constitution of the country, and because they cited the constitution of the country, it was something that was not valid only for the jurisdiction of Delhi NCR, but the whole of India. Um, then, of course, in 2000, that riled up a lot of people. Um, uh, Baba Ramdev, Baba Ramdev and other people stopped doing yoga, and they were busy advocating homophobia. So in 2013, we lost the verdict. And then I should add that with Anjali Gopalan, it was also, they were also, there's also Lawyers Collective who had stood with us. You see a new group of activists and lawyers who have come, and in 2018, who have worked hard, who have got us the verdict. But one can't and one shouldn't forget the fact that Anand Grover and his team at Lawyers Collective was right with us right from the beginning till the final verdict as well. So they also had filed petitions, and they were there till the final verdict as well. So the government has not been very kind to them. Their FCRA has been taken, the Lawyers Collective FCRA has been taken, and they are lying low, but um, that doesn't really mean that we shouldn't acknowledge and we should forget what they have done, and of course celebrate the new activists and the new lawyers who have fought. But be kind to history, and remember all of them. So yes, in 2013 we had a negative verdict, which basically put the ball in the court of the parliament, and they said that the parliament would decide. Shashi Tharoor um, um, tried pushing the issue again and again, and he was bullied in parliament, and he was taken aback. Many a times people assume that he was gay just because anyone who fights for LGBT rights is LGBT. That's what they assume. Also, between this, we also had a positive NALSA verdict on 15th of April 2014. We had the NALSA verdict, which basically gave the right of self-identification to every individual when it came to gender. So the NALSA verdict was there, and then we had we almost thought that we are making progress in the gender space, but in the sexuality space, we were still having 377. So while in the gender space, and we had another We had a transphobic Trans Act, which came into existence, which got purified and purified and purified. A little bit, we are still there is still a lot of objection to the Trans Act, and rightfully so, which exists today. You still have to go to a district magistrate and strip yourself and take a certificate from a district magistrate, which is not this thing. But in 2018, we had a positive verdict, and of course, you had Humsafar Trust. You had a lot of implement. You had the IIT Bombay, the IIT Bombay alumni, who had the IIT alumni who had put in an application. There was Humsafar Trust was fought by Anand Grover and Lawyers Collective. IIT Bombay was fought by um, was fought by was fought Menaka Guruswamy. So we had a lot of these fights together, and there was some implement application. I had an implement application, which is fought by um, Mahesh Malani. So we had different people from um, different pockets who had different applications. Parents had put in an application in the first in 2013. Here there was an implement application for that as well. So we had a lot of people who contributed to the success in 2013, 2018, and but yes, we haven't really achieved everything. What we have got is the real change exists happens not in courtrooms but in the hearts and minds of people. It doesn't happen in the witness box, but in what we witness, in what we see. It doesn't happen with verdicts, but with conversations. And that we are at that cusp of history where we are trying to create more conversations, so that we could move from move from uh, move from being be, from winning a verdict to actual victory, which would be when the hearts and minds of people change. So we are at that stage right now. The government, as we know, is more interested in optics rather than the optics and theatrics rather than actual change. Uh, so uh, so we so it's on people like us, and we need to identify that now the fight is not is for everything. It's not just for LGBT marriage. It's not just for marriage rights. It's not just for adoption rights. It's for everything. So we all have to, because our first hurdle was 377. Our first hurdle, but now we want everything, and anyone who feels anything is important for them, they can file, they can pursue it in the court. Also, we need to understand that the future is intersectional. That if you give me rights to have sex um, with another consenting adult in private, or you get me the right to marry, but you actually jail me because I am um, because you throw me out of this country because I because the CA because I'm Muslim and CA doesn't recognize, I don't have my great grandfather's details, then it doesn't do me good. What will I do with freedom when freedom to have sex, when freedom to have sex, or freedom to be my own gender, when I don't have the freedom to be, or to the freedom to breathe, or to live in a place without prejudice. So one needs to understand that when you kind of sabotage a part of me, you sabotage the whole of me. So if I'm humiliated, not humiliated because of my sexuality, but I'm humiliated or I'm subdued or subjugated because of my caste, because of my religion, because of my ethnicity, but I'm not the law actually allows me to love whoever I want, but not to be the way I want. It doesn't do me good. So queer people exist not only in not only in the forefront and in the margins, we exist in every intersection of caste, religion, creed, and gender. And that becomes important for us to recognize. And the future is intersectional. Okay.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Harish. Thank you so much for that. But like, yeah, I did want to know what keeps you going. Like, I'm sure you would have saved it like at least 100 lives. You um, have almost saved my life also, I would say, because I was very depressed. And Harish is so sweet. He's just a call away, and he will just make you feel better. So we do want to know, how do you do that? How do you keep going? You get so many stress calls, and what motivates you?
Well, I suffer. I'm a mental health advocate because I also have a mental health challenge. I suffer from dysthymia, which is small portions of depression for a prolonged period of time. So I take medications regularly. So the first step towards towards breaking the stigma is to say openly that you also are a sufferer of a mental health challenge. So that's one thing. And what I do is I have a group of friends. One of my very close confidants and friends is Sonal as well. So I would call up people. I might not talk to her every day, but when I'm low, I would call up people, and I don't keep the burden to yourself. Find a confidant and share it with people. When people also share things with me, I don't share their things to people, but I share their things to my dog and my cat. So I would just sit with them and, I heard this happened. Everyone needs that needs that catharsis, needs a moment with themselves, especially social workers, especially people who listen to trauma of other people. We need to offload that trauma so that when the person speaks to us afresh, we are able to listen to the person once again and attend to the person attentively. So you need to offload. Unless you get rid of the baggage that you have, you wouldn't be able to listen to again. Yes, since the past, I've been listening to people right from, and I get, since I'm server cost sampan, I sometimes get calls for animal welfare. I get calls for child sex abuse survivors, and parents of child sex abuse survivors call me. I get calls for LGBT issues. So the thing that keeps me sane is I give myself time, which I know, which I didn't give myself for a long time. So I used to have this sudden breakdown moments, but now now I give myself time. I don't overload myself. I direct calls to. I'm not a trained counselor, though I'm learning. I'm doing an IGNOU course on relationship counseling, but I'm not a trained counselor as yet. So I kind of divert calls to people. I don't take the whole load myself unless it's someone who specifically only wants to speak to me. Then I don't divert that call. So yeah, so I do that. I do a lot of self care, and I have my. It's important to have your group, your own cocoon, where you could go back to rest. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Harish, for this. I'll quickly hand it over to Sonal. Sonal, the stage is all yours.
Thanks, Ashish. I've been kind of thinking about this, like to to kind of tell your story in 15, 20 minutes is very difficult, because so much has happened over the years. But I'm going to try. So I think it'll be good to begin from my childhood. Um, so my parents, my father is from the Navy, Indian Navy, and so I grew up in a defense base. My mother's a homemaker. I have an elder brother, and I have an identical twin sister. So actually, growing up, since I had an identical twin sister, I don't think really I had a very, I didn't really have an identity of my own. We were, because we were twin sisters, we were in the same school and we were in the same class in the same section, and in fact made to sit on the same bench. And in fact, our teachers even didn't know like who's Rupa and who's Sonal. My sister's name is Rupa. So, they would call us out as Rupa Sonal. And actually, even till our 12th standard, our marks were more or less, similar. Um, but of course, because she's my twin sister, we are very, very close, and we've always been around each other. And it was in my sixth standard that I started having a crush on a boy in my class. And I remember, so my school was I'm from KV, and they were very disciplinarian, and like you weren't really allowed to talk. Definitely not talk about crushes and things like that. So I remember that, with a lot of hesitation, I sort of told her finally about the crush on the boy that I had. And she told me about a crush that she had on another boy in my class. So that's when we started talking a lot, about our crushes. So my father is a defense guy. So, at 9 o'clock sharp, he would do lights off. And once he would go, then from 9 o'clock onwards, we would talk about, whoever we are currently crushing on. There weren't very many, but yeah, we were crushing on. So in my seventh standard, I started having a crush on a girl. Yeah, and at that time, I didn't really have the language for it. Basically, I mean, it's only in retrospect that I realized it is a crush. But basically, what was happening was that I wanted to see what is happening with her all the time. I wanted to talk about her. Whenever she would move around in the corridors of the school, my heart would start fluttering and stuff. So one of the nights when I usually talk, I introduced this girl. And 2, 3 nights in, my sister is like, Sonal, why do you keep talking about this girl so much? Like, are you a lesbian? And she laughed. And this all happened in the dark, so she couldn't see my expression. But for me, that was the beginning of a kind of shame that kind of crept in, that whatever it is, I'm not lesbian. And so moving forward, I didn't have any. Uh, definitely, I was very clear that I'm not a lesbian. But I think that what started happening was that over the consecutive nights after that, I started talking about the girl very less, but not completely not talking about her. So it was an hour. I would talk 55 minutes about the guy and about 5 minutes, about the girl. And really speaking, all of my school, I didn't have much problem because really, in our school, even like nobody had girlfriends or boyfriends, so it was not a challenge in any sort of way. And the thing was that, I was a very kind of always the class leader, very talkative in class, and generally very well liked. So I didn't really, face any kind of direct challenges. Then I joined a college, a hotel management college, and this is where I met people from other parts of the country, and it was a real culture shock for me because suddenly everybody was having like boyfriends and girlfriends, and the teachers were very much encouraging couples in college. And this is the time I first had a boyfriend. And in my third year, for the first time, I started having a crush on a girl again. And I started feeling that, I would want a girlfriend like I have a boyfriend. I don't want the girl to just be a friend. But actually, before I could, figure out the language or figure out what was happening to me or accept myself, one of my classmates decided to out me, without my consent. So they basically put a picture of this girl whom I used to hang out a lot with, and they put up a poll on the college group with her photograph, asking, "Do you think they are a lesbian couple?" And when I found out about that, I called up the admin and asked them to remove it. But the response that I was got was that the group is not hardly ever active, and this is a matter of public interest, and so he's not going to remove it. And that's when I told him that there's something known as consent, and you know how I have a problem with it, and I was really assertive, and finally he kind of took it down. But the damage was done, by that point. So what started happening was that a lot of rumors started flying around about me. So every rumor in the book, and people with their wild imaginations of what lesbian women or bisexual women are like, a lot of stuff was being said, and this made me quite depressed actually. And my in my college, my sister was not in the same college as me. This was the first time we were actually separate from each other. She was in Bombay and I was in Goa when all of this was happening. So I kind of became really depressed. And what started happening was that the homophobia started becoming very public, and it became very difficult actually for me. And this is the time I started searching if there are any LGBT groups, and that's when I found the Humsafar Trust on the internet. But at that point of time, the Humsafar Trust used to identify as a male sexual health agency. So I didn't think that, I didn't have I was as prejudiced about gay men as straight people would, right? So I thought that, they will be men who will be hypersexual. So I had this kind of thing, in my mind also. So I didn't approach them. And I didn't ask them if they knew of any groups for women, right? And so when this kind of continued, this is the time when I came out to my mother. And my mother, because I became pretty depressed, very suicidal, and at some point, I had to come out to my mother, because even she was noticing that, I'm losing, like, I lost like some 5-6 kgs in like 2 months, and the changes in the body were very visible. So my mother asked me like, what is up, and then I told her about both, my affections for both men and women. And so she said, oh, so you like men also, so maybe this is a phase, and if you go for counseling, you'll get sorted. So when because all of this was happening, at that point of time, the only way I knew how to handle the homophobia that was coming my way was to accept that I am, a lesbian. I didn't know the word bisexual at that point. So, I was like, हाँ हूँ तो देख लेंगे आगे, क्या होगा. So, if anybody asked me about my sexuality, even indirectly, I would say, yes, I am, and that is the way I handled my, whatever attention was coming my way. And this is why I also decided that, I need to start looking up. And I found out, उस time पे ना उस ज़माने में chat rooms बहुत होते थे. So I got into a chat room, which was a UK based chat room. And there I found somebody who was an Indian who knew Hindi. She was from Los Angeles, but she knew Hindi. And she told me that there are like her ex, that woman's ex was an Indian, and that Indian was part of some support groups in Bombay. And she told me she'll find out for me, and she'll connect me to those groups. But she had told me that it is in Bombay. So keeping that in mind, I decided that, like, whenever my placements happen, I will try to apply for placement in Bombay for these two reasons. Primary, of course, that my twin sister was in Bombay, and the second reason was that if there's a community, I'll be closer to it. So at that time there was a company which came, and at that time, 2009 की 2007 की बात है, 2006 2007, they said that they have policies which are friendly for LGBT, right? And it was unheard of, okay, at that time. And so I was like, I want to get into this company only. And that's how I kind of came to Bombay. I got through that placement, came to Bombay. But for the longest time when I was here, I was so busy in a hotel job, that there was no time actually to engage with the community in any sort of way. But I had found I had found 2 party groups at that time, and this was Rainbow Pride Connection and Symphony in Pink. These party groups don't exist right now, but that time you had Yahoo Messenger. People used to have Yahoo groups, and you will have like a chat ID, and you can chat with people on Yahoo Messenger. Yeah, so yeah, that is the point when I reached Bombay and I found about these groups. But one of the things that would keep happening was that the minute I said I was interested in men as well, I used to face a lot of biphobia. People used to be like, "Oh, you are confused," or you're going to play with our feelings, and they had this notion about bisexuality that you're very promiscuous, and I would find that there was nobody willing to date me because of the whole biphobia that I was facing in the community. And around this time, what happened was that I found a partner. And first time I had a partner who was very comfortable with her own sexuality. And so I introduced her to Rupa as well. And Rupa became very positive and supportive after meeting somebody actually. And I thought that things would were finally going to be okay. But what started happening was that because I used to meet this girl very often, or I would be out on the weekend with her, at my workplace, people started hinting that I could be queer, and I didn't want to be out at that point in my workplace because I didn't want a repeat of what had happened with me in my educational space to happen at the workplace. And this started affecting my work a lot, because what happened is that, because I wanted to not, not be the butt of jokes. What I started doing was I started changing the pronoun of my partner. So instead of saying I went out with her, I would say I've gone out with him. But I started feeling like a real fraud. Like, I started feeling very disconnected at my workplace, because I thought that it's ये बात खत्म हो गई, चेंज कर दिया, जेंडर खत्म होती है बात खत्म नहीं हुई. It used to keep coming up, and it used to come up many times in the day. So my trust level with my team was not really working, and I think that it was the onset of proper depression. I mean, I was depressed during my college, but I think it was a rerun, of the depression which came in place. And so I started becoming very, I was not performing very well at work. I started skipping work quite a bit because of my depression. And this is when the management, they decided to, have a chat with me and ask me what is the problem. And they told me they keep it anonymous. And I came out to them, but they didn't keep it anonymous. And this led to a whole another set of homophobia in the workplace as well. Where there was a lot of sexual graffiti with my name. If I would go into the changing room, women would move out. And the final straw in multiple instances of homophobia, the final straw was, one day I was being dropped back home, and the driver of the drop, he actually showed me a pamphlet. And whenever I would try to report any of these people, and of course, like this person, when this particular thing happened, I froze. But the good thing was that I saw a McDonald's on the way. I asked him to stop. I had a cup of tea, and regained my senses, and just told him to drop me back. Otherwise, I'll complain. But the thing was that whenever I would complain, right, the response would be that, why is this happening with only you? It's not been, nobody else is going through that. Then why is it happening with you? And I was not out. So, I mean, I didn't know how to say that, oh, I'm bisexual, and like, this is the kind of prejudice around it. There is a sexism around it. That's why this is happening to me. So, I mean, I was left with no option except to leave the workplace. And this was in the year 2008, I think, 2008, 2009. And because, for me in my life, I was at a point where, like, it was extreme negativity. I didn't think that I'll ever be able to work in any place, because, my sexuality will follow me. And because of all this space, I finally, reached a counseling room. And what happened was that we started working with the therapist, and over 2-3 years, what finally happened was that I realized that, my primary association with my sexuality had been that of shame, from the first time, that my sister had spoken about it. And slowly we changed it to pride, slowly working on it, and I slowly started becoming more comfortable. And this is the time I decided that, I want to work on films, and I will work with the queer community. And at that time there were 2 queer film festivals happening. This was the year, 2009 में फिर Judgment भी आया उस वक्त पे, which was a big booster for my confidence. Because for the first time, suddenly everywhere in the news, everywhere, there were just people around who were queer, and people were speaking out and open at that time. And that is the time I also found out of more queer groups. I had heard about Geeta Kumana. So I knew that, there are people who are activists who are out speaking very openly. But खैर तभी तक भी मेरा ऐसा था कि, when people would call me, like activists would call me, for the first Pride March, it was in 2008, I would be like, don't call me for the Pride March. Call me if there's a party. But at some point I decided, no, I want to work in films, which was a childhood dream. So I assisted on a TV show for UTV. And then soon after that, I got to know that there are 2 film festivals happening in Bombay. One was Queer Nazaria, and the other was the first edition of the Kashish Mumbai International Queer Film Festival. And again, when I went and saw these films, right, my whole worldview kind of changed, my life changed. Because there were so many films, discussing multiple aspects around gender and sexuality, what was happening in other countries. And I slowly started becoming even more accepting of myself. And this is the time the Humsafar Trust was looking for an assistant director for 2 of their films that they were making. So Sridhar Rangayan was making 2 films. He was looking for an AD. And so I went and interviewed. And I think like for them also it was a very interesting case, because I mean I was very out by that time and women were not out. I mean उस time पे I remember सिर्फ गीता कुमाना ही थी who you knew who was out, and I was one person who was like, yeah, I'll talk to the media, talk to whoever. And so then I started working with the Humsafar Trust, first on two of their films. But the first project that I worked with the Humsafar Trust also was again life changing for me, because it was a project called Project Bolo, which was an oral history project where they were interviewing some 20 activists who were detailing the history of the LGBT movement. Okay. And so, I mean, the final interview was 45 minutes. But for me, as a young person, I mean, I was listening to 20 people who were telling me the history of my movement, like one listening to the actual interview over 2 days, and then transcribing all the interviews as the time goes by. And that's when I felt that why am I like these people, when there wasn't even law. 2009, it was a great time. That time I was thinking, even before there was a friendly law, people have been working, so what prevents me from doing any community work? So that is when me and a couple of more friends, we co-founded two of our initiatives. One was Yariya, which was a support space for youth, and Umang, which was a support space for lesbian, bisexual women, and transmasculine persons. We felt the need for a separation because the issues of based on gender were very different. The community mobilizing was very different. And I had a great boss actually at the Humsafar Trust. His name is Vivek Anand, and he was the kind of person who sort of realized that I mean I can communicate quite well, so he put me onto projects which were about advocacy. So he put me into projects where my first big project was was a project where we took this play called Ek Madhav Bagh around India. And we used to this play was about a mother who gets to know her son is gay, and then how does she respond to it. And then after that we used to have a Q&A. So, now, I mean, since the time the play started, when we started working with it, it has had more than like 100 performances. But, with each performance, I started engaging with audience, and, I started getting a hang of what are the questions that keep coming. And major thing that I realized, कि मेरा जो दिमाग में जो homophobia था और जो मैं लोगों से बात करी थी वो बहुत अलग चीज थी. Like when I would talk to people, I would realize that the primary problem is not hate. The primary problem is ignorance. They just don't know about the community. Nobody is actually engaged with them who actually know the subject. And so it started giving me more confidence. And so then the Humsafar Trust made me their advocacy manager. And because they made me the advocacy manager, I had to quote sometimes. If something happened around LGBT, I had to start talking in the media. So so initially where I would not use my name, I started using my name, my full name. And my relatives would see, but nobody had a problem. So slowly, I started coming out from there, and that's when I got the offer for two very big projects, I would say, in terms of visibility. One was Connected Hum Tum, which was a TV show that I was part of, which was very documentary style. So my life was on television for about 3 months, and I was also part of a Bollywood film where I played a lesbian character. And again, because of the kind of coverage Zee Television had, I had a lot of people writing to me because of the TV show, and that's when again I realized that I mean I received thousands of messages from around India, and but when it comes to hate mail, there was only one hate mail. Otherwise it was only like either LGBT people, parents, or people who were supportive, who were writing to me. And I mean, it was a great period in my life, but that's when 2013 happened and the community went back to being recriminalized. So for me, like I had become very out, and suddenly you were trying to push us all back into the closet. And one of the things that the court at that time said that there aren't enough FIRs to prove that Section 377 affects the community in any sort of way. And ये बात मुझे बहुत दिल पे लगी थी. I was like, this cannot be, because we are affected, and that's why I tuned my focus at that time fully to crisis cases. And I realized the problem was that the community, not like there wasn't crisis happening, but community was not able to document it. There was a lot of police enforced resistance, so they would not file FIRs. So I changed my focus there and started working specifically on cases around Section 377 and anything, whether it was rape, extortion, anything, making sure that people are taught how to document, and started going into the police station And this was a change that had happened because, when I joined the NGO first, I was very scared of police station. But after this and after 2013, it completely kind of changed for me. So, I mean, as part of the Humsafar Trust, it gave us a lot of opportunity. So I was on a project which was a global fund project called Pehchan, which worked in 5 states and in 51 districts. And I was their advocacy manager. So I trained them to also, how do you handle crisis cases? How do you ensure FIR? Learned legal language myself. I'm not a lawyer, but I had to learn legal language, and more than that, teach people from on-ground experience that how do you get cases to get filed in, the police station. And so actually, finally, when 2013 से जब मतलब हम आए यहाँ पे 2018 तक, तब तक हमने बहुत सारे cases फाइल कर लिए थे, which we finally sort of used in the Supreme Court. So from the Humsafar Trust also, and plus from Umang and Yaria, we did file a petition supporting the existing petitions in the Supreme Court, and then the judgment came. And I remember on the day of the judgment, I was on Republic TV with Arnab. I know not many people are fan of him, but I was on that day with Arnab, and for some reason, delay chal raha tha. So I was the it was supposed to come out at 11, and 11:30 ko judgment aaya, and I was the only person with Arnab, at that moment. And when the judgment came, he shook my hand and said congratulations, and it was a great moment, because it was like, okay, it felt like, by that time, every single person in my family and everybody who I had sensitized over the years, be it corporates, be it any, kind of different entities around, India, educational spaces, every single person who knew me saw me that day on television, and if anybody would have told me कि in 2009 कि ऐसा कुछ हो रहा होगा या मेरी लाइफ ऐसे बदलेगी, I would not have believed it. So I thought that it was a great, completion of the circles. And I think for me, definitely my life changed when I met the different activists, around the country. And I really believe that it's very important that we take pride in ourselves. Pride is the reason that, people are able to then channel all their energies and give you their best. So yeah, thanks.
Great, lovely. Thank you so much for this. I was about to say I have a very mean comment regarding Arnab Goswami, but let's not go there. So I'll open it to the audience. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. But like, I also had one question for Harish. I think, Harish, I first saw you on Satyamev Jayate when Amir Khan was hosting that show. What happened after that? Because that show, I think, gave a lot of hope to a lot of people, because मैंने फर्स्ट टाइम टीवी पे देखा था कि इस बारे में बात हो रही है एंड मेरे से और भी लोग हैं, आई एम नॉट एन एलियन. सो हाउ डिड थिंग्स चेंज आफ्टर दैट?
Actually, the fact is that I came on a show on child sexual abuse, though I was working with Amir's team on, in fact, in my show itself, I had mentioned about my sexuality, and Amir had edited that off. And when I asked him, why did you edit it? He had told me that one day I will do a full-fledged show on LGBT issues. So he was in touch with me, and his team was in touch with me, where we were trying to connect and get more people to speak about various issues. After that, of course, I think Amir was not the first person to speak about this issue. But yes, it was the most popular show.
Yeah.
Whether it was about LGBT or it was about child sexual abuse. I had first, in fact, spoken about child sexual abuse in Smriti Irani's show. Okay, she was. It didn't go out that well, as one would imagine. But and then I'd spoken in Barkha with Barkha Dutt and in other places about child sex abuse. About sexuality also. Sonal and I, both of us have kind of spoken at various forums. Many other people have also spoken. But the most popular happened to be Satyamev Jayate, because it had that kind of a bandwidth, and the reach was much more. Things changed. It is used as a reference point for many people's coming out. People often mistaken, and they tell me things that, oh, I saw your episode and then I came out, and then I would remind them that, you know what, I was not there in the LGBT episode.
Yeah.
I was there in the child sex abuse episode. But that's the remembrance value, because that show was incredibly important. the number of calls that people started getting had increased. The number of calls that I received definitely was much more. Um, I think advocacy के लिए बहुत अच्छा था Satyamir Jayate for though there were a lot of other people, and credit goes to everybody, right from Barkha Dutt to even Arnab Goswami. I mean, Arnab Goswami, uh, uh, pardon my French, is an asshole when it comes to other issues maybe, but when it came to LGBT issues, like even Arnab was on our side.
Yeah.
So
Also,
so yeah.
if I may add,
Sorry?
if I may add, no, I just wanted to add that so the Humsafar Trust was one of the NGOs which was like the हर show में आप एक NGO को support करते हो. So in this case, they supported Naz and Humsafar, but there were thousands of calls, thousands of people who reached out, after that one episode running, and also that money went into a lot of advocacy work. So I was in charge of the project. जो पैसे आए, I was in charge of the project to use it in terms of doing advocacy around the country. It was very, very helpful, in the larger, in terms of the community movement.
Great, great. So if anyone has any questions, you can please unmute yourself. You don't have to type it all out. It's a very casual conversation. So please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
I just wanted to talk and bring about this issue when it comes to inverse discrimination as something that happens within the community, where we as a community are already marginalized and we already face a lot of it outside from heterosexual people. And then within the community, we have our own folk who shame us basically on uh, the basis of our sexual preferences, our gender identities, the body types that we have. How do we have those conversations and how do we tackle those issues when we don't give other people a reference point that अंदर ही झगड़ा चल रहा है तो कैसे चलेंगे?
No, I mean, Neil, first of all, I mean, when I'm answering, I'm also coming from a personal space because I faced a lot of biphobia, and also around my polyamory, there's a lot of phobia around that as well. And but besides this, also, of course, I see a lot of body shaming that is happening in the community, and it's a constant challenge because क्या होता है कि this community is, I mean, like different people keep joining the community, and it's based on gender, sex, sexuality. It's not necessarily because you stand for a cause. So it's not because people who believe in a certain cause have come together. So they largely believe in something, and those are the discussions. But here you end up having people from all walks of life who may not necessarily come from the same location as you. So they come with certain, like I think they come with privilege, they come blinded about certain causes, and it becomes very difficult to, hold this space together. The only thing that we can actually really keep doing is regularly sensitize and keep giving platforms. And this is really, I mean, something that is supposed to happen at the community leadership level. We cannot really expect it at, I mean, हमको grassroots में हम जितना conversation करेंगे तो होता है. Like I remember जब, I think Arish will remember when I was coming out, biphobia was a huge problem. I mean, only me or one, two, Praful, Harish, we were the only 3-4 people fighting it. Now, when we see a, biphobic post, like there'll be 100 comments where people will challenge it. But there was a time where, we were singularly kind of leading it. But I think what needs to do is that you have to keep regularly sensitizing, and it is actually the community leadership that needs to sit and work on these issues. बहुत बार क्या होता है कि we assume that if you are part of the community you will be naturally sensitive, but actually you are not, and we need to continually regularly do it. Other problem a lot of us activists face is that sometimes just keeping up with the wave of the movement, because with every new wave of people there are new identities, and there is a new way of thinking, and sometimes keeping up with it is a challenge. And so we also need younger people to be a little more मैं younger बोल रही हूँ I'm just 33 but could be like in younger people also, they also need to have some patience, and we have to find ways of engaging which are more I would say respectful and calling in. I'm curious, Harish, what do you have to say?
I think I agree with you, Sonal. And one other thing is that we often of course we have started alleging and we have stopped talking to people. I think we need to understand that when we completely ostracize a person, when we completely block a person, when we completely say, you know what, this person is like this and this person is not going to change, then a person really will not change. Because that person, even if that person had an avenue of discussing with you, and this goes beyond gender, because I've seen women, I've seen men, I've seen trans people behaving nastily. So I think what's important is, of course, once it goes beyond a certain level, I understand that we resort to completely blanking the person off. And that's why what Sonal said about leadership is important. And leaders are not people who block out other people. Leaders are people who have the difficult conversation with other people and sit down with them and explain, what, I know you're coming from this space and this space is not something that's welcome over here. They might, and after that, if they don't understand, it's a different thing that it goes to a different trajectory. But the fact that we look at, and that's why to understand struggles of people is becomes so important, to understand the backstory and not just what is visible in front of you, but the backstory becomes so important. Like for instance, I was like many people are like 30 and that's when they finally came out. Like people before me who were activists, they were like 27, they were 30. That's when they came out. They came out to themselves, not even to the whole world. And they've come out at a time, and the culture and the mix that the struggles that they've had is very different. So their reactions are different. For them to adapt to something, whereas somebody who's like 18, 19 has actually woken up. The moment the person was woke, you had the Delhi High Court verdict. We had something very positive. 2009, that person would have been 9 years of age or something. So you have actually woken up, you have seen LGBT people, you have woken up with this thing, and you expect these people, these older people who have struggled, and who have this thing, that doesn't mean that the old people don't need to learn. They need to learn as well, but to unlearn something and is far more difficult than learning something. So we are in a less prejudiced this thing. That doesn't mean that we that there is no that this is better than that or that is better than this. Both are wrong. Any kind of prejudice is wrong. But there is a history, and we need to delve deep into the history and not just react to what we see, but to go behind the backstory and understand why people react. The moment we start doing that with a more empathetic mind, I think things will get better.
Definitely, also think resources. We need to create more resources. Sometimes, as activists, what happens is a lot of emotional labor goes into this. Because you have to keep kind of engaging with people multiple times. It becomes difficult. And to difficult to be patient also. It's not, and patience is not something that comes naturally. It has to be really cultivated. So I mean, I really believe that yes, resources chahiye, leadership chahiye, constant PA chahiye, training and talks and open conversations. Nowadays, I find that sometimes conversations around subjects which are difficult, people are बहुत डर जाते हैं आजकल तो nobody wants to write anything on their social media, worried that it will get a lot of backlash. So I really sometimes feel that we need to have different debating platforms also, not just Facebook or any of these.
Also, I had one more question. Suppose I want to start getting into activism, or even we have some allies here on the call. If they want to do something for queer activism, what is something I can do sitting at my house, or they can do sitting at their own places? What should they do to be a little more vocal, or probably start stepping into activism?
Hmm. Right. Like right now, I feel that this is a great time because everybody has a voice that has a reach, especially because of social media. Everybody has a Facebook account and everyone has Instagram. So even hosting a simple chat with an activist, like you in one shot on your Instagram profile with just a 1 hour conversation, you are able to talk to many people. But if say talking is not your main strength, it's not communication is not very great at it. So then there are other ways to support because especially when it comes to movements, you keep needing volunteers to support a lot. Whether it be in terms of say designing or in terms of organizing these things really help. And third of all, if you don't have any of these things, money definitely goes a long way. One of the things that we are still struggling in India with is the need for shelter homes and need for crisis support. Like just this week, I've had two people, who've been struggling with shelter, and I feel like it's time that we build a shelter home. So it's, if you can help and support with crowdfunding for initiatives like these, it goes a long way. And if nothing else, if you just put a rainbow on your, or even mention your pronouns, she or her, on your, what do you call it, bios, that also helps because then you add to the conversation. Just that much is enough.
Yeah. Harish, you want to add something?
Nothing. I think Sonal covered it. Just that, if you support something, then be visible about it. In whatever that visibility would mean. Whether that visibility is adding your pronouns where you actually put in कि अरे सब लोगों ने किसी ने she her नहीं लिखा है मैंने इसने खाली क्यों लिखा है चलो इसको पूछते हैं. Then you get a chance to answer why exactly that is the case. Or just speak openly. Just don't use queer people as your lapdogs. I mean, that's many people who do that. I have a pet Labrador and I have a queer friend. Don't do that. That could be a little condescending. But apart from that, you can be vocal about being a supporter as well. I mean, you can go out, as Sonal said, put a rainbow flag somewhere. Participate in pride parades, in discussions, start an employee resource group in your office, which is the LGBT friendly, join an ally group in your office. So there's so many things that one could do. So you don't, sometimes just, if you are not good at anything, just show us numbers. Just be there, just be dormant, just your visibility, just the fact that you add to the numbers makes a lot of difference.
Definitely.
For any minority, for that matter,
Yeah.
I will not say that about LGBT.
Mhm.
About any minority, when minorities by nature simply means that they are small in numbers. If you can just add up and become a part of that group, it adds a lot of strength to them.
Yesterday I shared a post where Kamala Harris was just won, and she had mentioned in her profile that her pronouns are she and her. And at least 7 or 8 people messaged me that what does that signify? Why are people writing she hers in front of their profile? And I wrote a long ass message explaining them how important it is and sent it to everyone. So that's how important these two words can be in your profile. So just mention it out there that what pronouns do you use. It actually starts a conversation. Yeah, if you guys have any more questions, and obviously, so
Yeah,
I mentioned.
Vidhi is trying to ask.
Can I
Go ahead,
ask,
Vidhi.
or is it
Go ahead, Vidhi.
Yes, please.
okay? I'm writing a book on gender difference. I'm just trying to understand and all. Since I get to know a little bit about bisexual, but I'm still trying to understand other. I want to know from both of you, Sonal, Harish, that the struggle that you have gone through. You already know the pain point. What is that pain point that everybody is going through? You know that is a point that needs to be taken care. Is there something specific that you want the world to, I know there are a lot of things now you're fighting on, but still that, everybody's inner struggle. You want to give a message or inner thing that, how to go ahead or cope up with it. Anything that,
Right. Right.
because you have gone through that stage. Yeah.
No, so for me, one thing that I feel across is that people want acceptance, especially from their family. Not everybody gets it. So, over a course of time, you learn to realize that, okay, maybe this is not working for me. But primarily, people want to be accepted as they are, who they are. So, when somebody comes out to you, one of the main things that they are worried about is that will the nature of your relationship with them change if they come out to you, and they want to be accepted as they are. So it's very important when somebody does, find the guts to come out to you, to sort of reassure them that, nothing will change about you and them. I mean, it will change in the sense of you want to be more part of their life. but it won't change. And I think that it's important for people outside to understand that एक चीज जो हरीश ने भी कही थी, जैसे जब शशि थरूर ने वो अपना बिल डाला था कि people think कि आप LGBT हो क्या इसलिए आप ये कर रहे हो. But the thing is that like if you can imagine somebody like a Shashi Tharoor goes through this kind of stigma, then this is our life. This is our whole life. And you can't expect people to come out of the closet if the environment around them is in the closet about their support. So people need to come out openly about their support out of their closet. Our families need to come out of the closet. This is a journey that needs to be done. But primarily, my whole thing will be around acceptance.
In fact, again, Sonal has said exactly what I wanted to say. I think self-acceptance, more than acceptance of the world, I think self-acceptance, the struggle happens because most of the times you try to juggle yourself and to fit into the world. And you think that the world assumes no responsibility to fit into your idea, But the truth is that at some point of our life, we need to understand that whatever you are authentically, the world will adjust to your idea of your existence. Okay, you don't need to keep adjusting to the world's idea that the world prescribes for you. And so that's one thing. Self-acceptance. Sonal touched upon acceptance by others. I think others is also important. That's the responsibility that the onus of others. But the onus of the self is to accept yourself completely. And
I think adding to that, I would say that self-acceptance से ये भी move करना कि pride की तरफ move करना. ये नहीं कि बस ये है. To actually be genuinely happy about who you are. I think that really changes the game quite a bit.
And there are many layers to it. I mean, in the sense that when we speak about self-acceptance, also it is not just people don't exist in monoliths. That's something that people need to understand. Like Sonal is. Sonal is, polyamorous. She is bisexual. So there's no one truth that defines her. That she's a mixture of a lot of truths, and it's not that Sonal or I have arrived at a point that we don't need to come out about some truths that are getting revealed to us. I didn't know Sonal as a polyamorous person at all when I knew her. She was the first bisexual person I met. In fact, I didn't know of many female activists, activists who are not male activists. I used to think that lesbians तो जरूर exist करते हैं, इधर अमेरिका में रहते हैं, मार्स में रहते हैं, but I didn't know that they existed in this thing. And I'm not saying that from a misogynistic standpoint. I'm in fact highlighting that the world was so misogynistic that that queer voices which are not male just didn't come up. That doesn't mean that they didn't contribute. And so that's why Sonal ka next part of what she said was important, because the environment, it's not that women and lesbians and queer women didn't exist around that time. The environment was not, I mean, अब बच्चियों को तो कोक में मार देते हो, okay? तो you don't expect in that scenario where that queer women should come out and speak. So they had to go through several more hurdles. Then so it becomes important for men to take a back seat and to realize, that this, especially when they point fingers at women, अरे तुम क्या जानती हो, तुम तो अभी आई हो, ऐसे तुमने आने नहीं दिया पहले. So I think it's also a point of self-reflection that all of us have to do within our spaces. Also, we are not one community. I mean, if people assume, there's this other assumption, answering the previous question also, there's this assumption that we are one nice family of us meeting together and loving each other. We have debates, we have fights. If Sonal and I choose to be together is because we look at each other beyond those fights, okay? And that's a choice that we make. But the truth is that it's not one happy family where we are not a monolith. We don't think alike. There are struggles. I'm a queer vegan, okay? So my fight is with everyone who even touches milk. Forget anything else, Okay. So I might actually discard a person who says that, you know what, you drink milk and I don't want to, because you are still supporting, supporting the oppression of other beings. But beyond that, am I going to label everyone? That's a choice. That it takes maturity for each one of us to realize and come beyond that, and to realize that each one of us has differences.
Awesome. We have
Thank
2
you,
minutes
thank you,
left.
thank
If
you.
anyone has one last question.
Hi,
You
yeah. Sonal, hi. This is Reena.
Hi.
I am research
Hi.
scholar. Sonal, I was
Yeah.
just I was wondering, don't we need to change the thought process of the younger children, younger generation? Because the change will come from there, I feel. I heard about LGBT term when I was doing my post graduation. So I think I heard it so late. So I feel, by ninth and 10th, we need to bring a little change in the curriculum by introducing little terms about LGBT. This is what genuinely I feel. Since I'm doing about transgender, I often tell my children, I teach 10th standard, so I often tell them about transgender to develop a little empathy. At least when they'll see them, they will not make fun of them. So I feel this thought process has to be changed from the younger generation. What do you feel, Sonal?
I agree with you. In fact, when you sensitize the younger generation, it also impacts your gender-based violence. So in countries like Denmark, and Norway gives a lot of funding around gender-based issues also. They are one of the most progressive on LGBT. So in their curriculum, you will find that age appropriate, in an age appropriate way, they talk about the spectrum in gender and the spectrum in sex and the spectrum in sexuality, and that has actually led to people when they become adults to for actually an all-round understanding and very much lesser shame around their bodies, an ability to also challenge any kind of violence that may be coming their way, especially sexual violence.